Yeah.
That's it, dude. I'm done.
Hey, valiant effort. We tried, right? I mean, what can you say?
I mean, this is brutal. Like, oh, so frustrated. You want me to record by myself quick, or I'm done with it?
I wonder what the audio is going to sound like, even with this phone call. I don't think the audio is that bad for a podcast. I won't put it on YouTube. But
what? Like, just record me like this? We'll talk right now?
Yeah.
All right, we can try it.
We could try it. If it doesn't,
my phone's on 85%, so let's go.
All right. Okay. Welcome to the NFLMAX, the radio show inspired by the league, founded in 1998, bringing you 20-plus years of fantasy football experience. Broadcasting from our brains to your earbuds as we break down player profiles for your teams in Dynasty. You can check us out now on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Facebook, or you can watch the show on YouTube at youtube.com/NFLMAX for your weekly Max fix. And here we are. The NFL draft has been over for a couple weeks now, so we've had plenty of time to digest these landing spots for the 2019 rookie class. Last week's episode, we had the NFL draft recap episode, which was roughly almost about 2 hours. Even though it was 2 hours, we still have some meat on the bone. Tonight, we're going to dive into some of these late round players and your day 3 prospects for this class. So, as always, Ewok Juggernaut here with the hot pineapples. Nick, what is going on, man?
Not much. This is the fun part of Dynasty. At the back end, if you can, kind of be in tune with what's going on at the back end of your draft, and take some upside shots, and figure out kind of what the situations are, and which guys have potential to rise up depth charts, or at least stick to start. You can have a major leg up on your competition in Dynasty, and it's not always the worst thing in the world to take an upside shot and on the back end of your roster, and if you get clarity by the end of preseason, great. You can move on from that player and turn a roster spot. So this is going to be some useful strategy talk here in this episode, and I'm excited to get into it.
Keeping with the theme of last week, basically we're going to continue landing spot landmines and some players that we think avoided landmines or hit some landmines. So to start it off here, I guess we'll go right to Kansas City. One of the juiciest situations, especially for running backs. And currently on the roster, Damien Williams just signed a 2-year deal, Carlos Hyde, and they drafted a rookie, little kid out of Utah State, Darwin Thompson. And Darwin Thompson is currently getting some buzz in the Dynasty community, and pretty well spoken of his coach, Andy Reid. But Utah State, we only saw 1 year out of Darwin Thompson. But it was a very productive year, ran for over 1,000 yards. But what I love most about him is the 6.8 yards per carry. And that's pretty legit coming out of college. So 6.8 yards per carry. Metrically, he shows some burst, some athleticism. The 4.6 speed is, really not what the tape shows. You watch the film on Thompson, and he looks a lot faster than 4.6, but that's what he ran. And his height is a little bit of concern, 5'8", 200 pounds, but he's explosive, and he's in an explosive offense. So thoughts here on what the Chiefs are going to do here with Darwin Thompson?
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts here. The first is about Darwin himself as a player. He's got some quality metrics, and And, obviously he goes day 3, but like you were saying, he lands at a pretty juicy spot in Kansas City. But I just want to remind people too, like one of the reasons that we're going to be going down this list and players that avoided landmines, so to speak, is because these guys were considered, on the bubble kind of or at risk for their team to invest early capital in the position. And I just want people to keep in mind, just because they're clear this year doesn't mean their prognosis for the future looks great. They were on this list for a reason. There was speculation that their teams would add early day 2 running backs for a reason. These guys are far from locks, and Kansas City is one of those prime spots. Early in the offseason, people were hot on Damien Williams. I mean, he was all the rage. Once they let go of Kareem Hunt and the dust settled there with that situation, people were buying Williams like left and right for 2021. I'm telling you right now, that's going to be negative EV for those guys who did that. I had Williams in 2 places and I sold them off. One in a co-ownership and one by myself for 2021. And I'm really happy with that. Especially sitting now, it seems like, that is definitely gonna be a positive thing for my dynasty team in the long term, because I just look at the situation and Darwin Thompson, even though he was a day 3 guy with quality metrics, then he slots in and he could have the potential to have a role. And Darwin Thompson is kind of like a weird situation for me, because I don't typically go after guys who project to be the 3rd on the depth chart, right? Like Darwin Thompson has a very good shot to make this roster over Darrell Williams and slot in as the number 3. But I don't typically like those guys because I want clarity. Either you're the number 2 or I don't want you on my roster, because I don't want to have to sit around for a couple of years and try to see how things pan out. That's just not my style. I would rather have the roster spot than hold a guy who's 3 on his depth chart and hope for 2 injuries ahead of him. But the cool part about Darwin Thompson is he's a really good fit in Kansas City. Matt Waldman even said this is the number 1 fit for this draft class. And say what you want about, what Waldman's done the past 2 years. He's hit really well on some players like Pat Mahomes, and he's missed on some players pretty significantly. But the one thing that I know Matt Waldman is well-versed in is scheme fit. He knows who runs zone, he knows who runs gap and whatnot. He said that Darwin Thompson and the Chiefs was his number 1 fit for this draft and its outcome. So I really think Carlos Hyde can play a bigger role in this offense than people suspect. I really think it's going to be Damien 1A and Carlos 1B, and it may not just be, Damien straight out. I think it's going to be 60-40 or 65-35, but I think Hyde is going to play a bigger role than people suspect. Damien hasn't done it for a season, and you got to remember, Damien has no draft capital himself. So he did it in a games, very small sample size. We always caution about small sample sizes in Dynasty, but it seems like we're throwing it out the window and chasing a situation. And I just want to caution people that, Kansas City was a prime spot to take a running back early day 2. They end up doing it, but they get a guy who is a really good fit for their system. And Carlos Hyde is a free agent. He was just in on a 1-year deal. So even though you don't have that clarity of a 2 spot and that upside for 2019, I think it's going to clear up pretty easily next year. Yeah. However, the thing I would caution is spending a 3rd round pick on Damien Thompson or Darwin Thompson, because with Hyde exiting, I still think it's a prime landing next year in that talented 2020 crop for an early day 2 running back. It almost seems like the writing is on the wall for Kansas City Chiefs to take an early day 2 running back next year. And that's how you win Dynasty, is to have that foresight. You be proactive and you try to anticipate what's going to be coming down the road. And I just think that this is the prime spot for a guy in 2020. So what happens? You end up keeping this running back 3 on your roster for a full year, hoping for an opportunity to move up to 2 going into next year. And then they draft an early day 2 back and you crush your roster spot all year long. So he's kind of like that middle ground. I'm willing to take him in the 4th for the upside in the landing spot, at the 3rd round price where he's currently going, because he's quickly rising up boards. I'm probably out at that price. You won't see me with Darwin Thompson in the 3rd round from here forward. I think I actually did take 1 share of him in the 3rd round in one of my leagues, but I'm always shuffling the board, assessing it. At this point, I just don't feel like that's a good move for my roster.
So another juicy situation obviously is in Houston with the Texans. And I don't know about you guys, but I do not trust Lamar Miller anymore. You're talking about a 28-year-old running back who hasn't run for 1,000 yards since 2016. And his contract's over after this year, so he'll be a free agent. Hopefully he'll be donezo with the Texans. And backing him up is Devonta Foreman, who's coming off a serious major Achilles injury. So there's really not much going on in Houston, and they did not – I was shocked that they didn't take a running back at all. They didn't draft a running back, period. Forget about day one or day two. They didn't draft one. So, I'm looking for some sneaky players here in this offense in the backfield. And the kid from Michigan, just want to bring up his name for anybody who wants to just remember this kid's name, and you can get him for free later on. He's worth a flyer, but it's Karan Higdon from Michigan. And, last year as a senior, he had over 1,100 yards rushing, and he grades out pretty well in the model here. He's got some wheels. He runs 4.4, 5'9", 206 pounds, average 5.7 yards per carry. So he's, above average in the college dominator, and he's got some wiggle, he's got some burst. But with the backfield that they have now in Houston with Lamar Miller and Devonta Foreman, for me, I'm willing to take a flyer on Higdon and stash him in like the last round, or maybe pick him up for free or something. But that is a team that I was shocked that they didn't address the running back position. So any thoughts on the Texans or even Higdon?
Yeah. So, just this goes back to what I was just talking about in the last, with the last team at the Kansas City Chiefs is like, I think the Texans have always have more clarity than a lot of others. I think what's up top of their depth chart. I think, Lamar Miller isn't a stud, obviously. He's an average back, but I think, they like him. Otherwise, they would have moved on from him. They definitely could have moved on from him this year. He's getting a pretty big salary, but I think they like him. He's a good locker room guy. He's a good leader. He's a good presence. And they view Devonta Foreman as someone that they definitely want to give another look. He was able to flash before his Achilles injury, and I think they want to see some more of that. And it's a make or break year for him, obviously. But, going back to what I was saying in Kansas City is like their depth chart's pretty clear to me. Lamar Miller's the one, Foreman's two. I suspect Devonta Foreman will get some run eventually at some point this year. But they're the top two guys, and then Higdon kind of slots in at three. And, especially Houston, like even if Lamar Miller, I suspect that we're going to see the last year of Lamar Miller here in Houston. And, either Devonta Foreman puts up this year or he's done. They're going to invest early capital next year. But either way, they're going to invest capital at the running back position. I don't see any situation where Higdon's number 2 on the depth chart. And you were saying, I don't know. It's just he's got if Lamar Miller gets hurt to be number 2 on that depth chart. But the thing is, where would the attention go? As soon as Lamar Miller goes down, who's going to get the attention? It's going to turn right to Devonta Foreman. Obviously, he's not a waiver wire guy, but no one has the foresight to go pick up the guy right behind Devonta Foreman. You can probably get Higdon in season, my guess is, off a majority of leagues off the waiver wire, unless it's a really deep league. I suspect that you're going to be able to get Higdon for free off the waiver wire. And if you have that foresight at that time, would be the right play to go get Higdon when he's one snap away. But until that point, I just see any logical reason to even keep this guy on the roster and take up a roster space, because it's pretty clear to me he's going to be number 3 on the depth chart. And, I'm going to be sitting on him for a full year, just hoping for 2 injuries ahead of him. It's just not the play that I would make in roster construction.
It depends on how deep your rosters are. If you're talking like 45-man rosters, 40-man rosters. But I mean, again, like, are we really going to put our eggs in the Lamar Miller basket? And that offense could be lethal. So with those wide receivers and Deshaun Watson and I don't know, man. I mean, I'm willing to take a shot on Higdon because I don't trust Foreman coming back from his injury. And Lamar Miller, yes, they believe in him, but this is the final year of his deal. If he goes down and Foreman is not the same, I mean, Higdon's going to be a really high waiver wire ad.
Yeah, but you should be watching the depth chart, and as soon as Lamar Miller goes down, that's when you go Higdon. That way, if Devonta doesn't flash, you're already there. You've already beat the people to the punch. You know what I mean? It's just got to be something that's done in season. Like even last year, When Kareem Hunt went down, all the attention turned where? To Spencer Ware.
Yeah.
And what should you have been doing? You should have been picking up Damien Williams right behind him because he was the next. It's just move down the list. Who's the next man up?
Well, nobody
you go get him. You have some foresight.
There were the two Williams, actually. There was with Darrell Williams.
Yeah, Darrell. Yeah.
And in one of my leagues, Darrell Williams was
the
actually
guy that picked up.
Picked up, and Damien Williams was still on waivers. But I'm just throwing the name out there because I was actually a fan of Higdon's in Michigan. So
and he was a high level recruit, which is a good. I mean, he was one of the highest level recruits in this class. So I mean, there's something to be said for that. Like you were saying, he's got some juice. Just if you're going to take it back at 205, I would like to see, someone with a little bit better of a production profile and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I do have a quick question for you. I'm going to throw out one pick'em scenario.
Okay.
Would you rather have D'Onta Foreman or Justin, and why?
Okay, you broke up there. D'Onta Foreman and who?
Foreman or Justice Hill, and why?
Oh, Justice Hill, hands down.
They give it to Hill again. Hill hits the hole, and this time he's down the sideline. Still on his feet. Here goes Hill. Off to the races. Justice Hill, 79 yards for the touchdown.
I've got Justice Hill. Okay. I've got him ranked very high. I'll just tell you right now, he's in my second tier. But Justice Hill playing that satellite role, that Danny Woodhead role in a PPR format, I'm all in on Justice Hill. And his profile is ridiculous. I've got him right now in my second tier of running backs for this class. And I absolutely love Justice Hill with that offense where Lamar can just dink and dunk. And he can be, dare I say it, a Alvin Kamara type player to Mark Ingram. So, yeah, it's not even close for me. It's Hill over Foreman. Why is that not the consensus? Is Foreman?
No, because I was in a conversation with someone over this very situation, and I actually took D'Onta Foreman.
Wow.
Because I think personally, obviously, Justice Hill has a very defined role within Baltimore. It seems like he's, like you were saying, going to be the satellite back, whereas D'Onta Foreman's flash 3-down potential, and I want to see more. And I think it's a make or break year for him. But again, you'll get that clarity by the end of this year. Either he can make it as a 3-down back in the NFL, can't, and you're going to have that clarity. I think the upside is capped with Justice Hill. I don't think there's limitless potential with him. Whereas D'Onta Foreman, you saw him flash, and if he gets that lead role in Houston in a very, like you're saying, dynamic offense, I think that the sky is the limit for him if he can prove healthy and back to what he flashed early in his career pre-Achilles. I know that it's probably not likely that he's back to that, but even just the upside shot of that, that's the kind of bet that I'm willing to take in Dynasty. And you can find other satellite backs, I think, akin to the talent that Justice Hill can bring. I want the guy who's flashed 3-down that has upside personally.
In comparison with the two, as far as draft capital goes, they were drafted relatively close. So D'Onta Foreman was 325, and which is late 3rd round pick, and Justice Hill was an early 4th at 411. For me, I mean, he shows top 5 percentile attributes as far as speed, 4.4 flat, broad 130, which is top 5 percentile, and his burst. He's just a ridiculous athlete, and he had a 5.7 yards per carry in college at Oklahoma State. So, he shows some really serious potential in a PPR format where he could just kill. I mean, if Mark Ingram goes down, of course he's not going to be the bell cow, but in a PPR format, we're looking at like best case scenario, Danny Woodhead, which was like 20 points a week in his heyday. So I'd rather go with the upside on Hill than I just don't trust the injury of Foreman. But
okay. Just a discussion, talking point.
No, that's fair.
We disagree, but that's fun.
So we would both agree that Lamar Miller and D'Onta Foreman avoided landmines, just to keep with the theme. So we had some technical difficulties, but Nick is back via the phone. So the internet is giving us some problems tonight, but we are, barreling through it tonight. And we got Nick on the line here. So continuing on here to Miami, you got Kenyan Drake, who's an unrestricted free agent after the season, and our boy, Kalen Ballage. Now, man, I mean, this is it for Kalen Ballage. I'm thinking I'm putting all my chips in here on Kalen Ballage, and I'm thinking he's going to steal the show here in Miami this year, and he's going to win that role. And I know you're a big fan as well. So they both avoided a landmine. Miami didn't draft a running back relatively high. They drafted the kid's name, Myles Gaskin, in the 7th round, which is, pretty much a UFA. But I like Kenyan Drake, but I love Kalen Ballage. So what do you think here?
Yeah, I think they definitely avoid a landmine for sure. Myles Gaskin is not going to be an issue on this depth chart whatsoever. I think, they might even bring some competition in, for that third back spot. I don't even see him, as a sure lock to make the roster at this point. So it really is Kalen Ballage and Kenyan Drake going for it this offseason. And, I really like Drake. I like the way they deployed him last year as a pass catcher, but Ballage, man, he can do that role too. He really flashes more of a 3-down potential in my eyes. And I would love to see them just hand him the reins. It's going to be interesting to see what a new coaching staff does. I don't think that they have ties to anyone coming into the off season. And I think, and I hope that they would just pick the most talented back, which in my eyes is Kalen Ballage. And but just like you, all my eggs are in the Ballage basket. I have a very healthy amount of Kalen Ballage across my portfolio. And I'm really hoping he comes through because, man, can he be a home run hitter? You saw him flash it in that game where he had like 100 yards in 2 or 3 runs. The man can play, and I'm excited to see what his potential is within this offense if he gets a shot.
Absolutely. And he was so underutilized last year under that regime, Kalen Ballage was. And, we were both screaming for him to play. He never played. And then when he finally did play, he had that big game with over 100-something yards, and he just looked awesome. So, yeah, it is scary with a new regime when they're not married to any of these players. But I think Ballage showed enough last year where, obviously they didn't draft anybody of relevance. So, wheels up for Kalen Ballage here. And, we're hoping that he can be the lead dog and Kenyan Drake could, be more of that receiving type of back in the backfield. So moving on from Miami, Tampa Bay. Now, this is a situation where, again, I was scratching my head once again, with Houston, KC, and now with Tampa Bay. You got Peyton Barber on the roster. He didn't look anything spectacular last year. He had his shot. Rojo stunk. He was terrible. And it was pretty much Barber's team. And, I don't know how about you feel. You probably feel different than I do about Barber, but I don't think he showed that well. He's going to be a free agent. His contract's over. And, I guess because they used such high draft capital with Rojo in the 2nd round last year, I'm assuming they weren't willing to go down that road again. So, but they didn't even address it in the later rounds either. So it's Barber and Rojo for 2019. And if you got your Rojo shares, you're crossing your fingers here and you're hoping that he shows well, because this is probably his last shot at relevancy here. Because if he drops the ball again, you got to believe that they're going to use a day 1 or day 2 pick next year, Tampa Bay. So what are your thoughts here on Tampa Bay?
Yeah, so I think Peyton Barber showed a little bit better than you might think within this offense. And the thing to keep in mind here is that Peyton Barber's contract was already up. They brought him back for another year, so he was already out the door. They decide to give him 1 more year, and I think that's his insurance for Rojo. I don't think they're sold on him, and obviously it's a new regime. Arians gets production out of his running backs. But Rojo, he has to beat out Peyton Barber first. People are starting to treat him like, he's the buy of the season. He's the surefire, locked and loaded starter. Well, guess what? It's Peyton Barber that kept him off the field last year. Obviously Rojo kept Rojo off the field, but it was also Peyton Barber that just flat out beat him out. So, it is no guarantee that Rojo steps back on the field and he's just a surefire starter. I think Peyton Barber is going to get every shot to compete with him in camp. And the reason that I love Barber right now is, he's still practically free. This guy goes under the radar constantly. He is so underrated in my opinion. I think he showed decently well last year. And for the price of free, he far out exceeds what you're going to have to pay to get him. And what's the worst case scenario? He's behind a guy that we, don't really like or we don't really trust. Rojo is a guy that both of us have been on here saying, stay away from this guy. He's not good. Even if he gets an opportunity on the field, he could fumble it away or, he could break in half. He's thin. So the worst case scenario, in my opinion, for Peyton Barber is he's one snap away. And that's the guy for free that I'm looking to acquire right now. Startup drafts. You're starting to come into startup season now after, another wave of startup season after the rookies finally have their landing spots. Peyton Barber is going to be, free.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. At worst case scenario, he's one snap away behind a guy that we don't like. Best case scenario, he does exactly what he did last year, which is keep Rojo off the field, except this time he's in probably a much more functional offensive system. So for me, Peyton Barber is a definite buy right now. Not saying for the long term, but for a short term, team who's contending, who might need a spot start here or there, Peyton Barber is definitely someone that I would look at because, for free, everybody loves free things. You can't beat that price point.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to go the other way. And it's strictly based on draft capital. The fact that they used a second round pick on Rojo. I don't know where they're going in ADP, but I would rather have Rojo just because of that draft capital. I've got to assume they're going to try to give him a shot. Because Peyton Barber is just a jag to me. He's just another guy. And if I'm going to, throw darts on anybody, I'd rather just go with the draft capital player, and that's Rojo. So we'll see. It's going to be ugly, but we'll see. Moving on to Denver and Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, the league loser, avoided landmines, and we're going to see it play out. We're going to see what happens this year with these guys. I am not high on Royce Freeman at all, and Phillip Lindsay crushed hearts last year in your championship games, week 16, with a stupid wrist injury. It was just ridiculous how he left that game with 40 yards, I think he had. But anyway, Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, the Broncos did not draft a running back this year. So they're going to roll out those two guys and, we'll see what happens. I know you're a Royce Freeman fan. So you've got to be happy about this situation.
Yeah, I'm still very much a believer in Royce Freeman. I think this is his shot. I think last year he got dealt a bad hand. He was facing a lot of stacked boxes. Phillip Lindsay was facing a lot of non-stacked boxes. And, obviously with that is going to come the numbers. There's no doubt about it. Lindsay's explosive, but he is still so paper thin. Royce Freeman is just built like a rock. He's got balance. He's got good vision. I just see Royce as a guy who's going to work himself through this depth chart. He's, a worker. He's going to get the rock in off season. He's going to do well. He's coming in with the chip on his shoulder. I just see this being Royce's year. And Phillip Lindsay, he really flamed out at the end of last year, even before the wrist injury, when they gave him the lead back role. He's not a lead back in the NFL. He's an optimized touch guy. I think he can still be successful in that role, but I don't foresee him ever having a season like he had it last year. I think they really utilized him well, and I don't think that they can do that again. I just don't see something there that's sustainable the way it was. He was a hard sell for me last year. He was a hard sell for me over the offseason, and that hasn't changed. I'm still a Freeman believer. But as far as avoiding a landmine, I think that speaks to Devonta Booker. And I think the one thing that you need to realize about Devonta Booker is he does have that draft capital. Denver drafted him in the second round. He's a solid NFL back. And although he's third on the depth chart, the nice thing that Devonta Booker can do is he can tote the rock inside the tackles and he can catch passes. So the nice thing about Devonta Booker is If Freeman goes down, he can handle that early down work. If Lindsay goes down, he can catch passes and be that third down back. He can fill both of those roles. So even though he's the type of guy that's third on the depth chart, he's really one snap away from either role, in my opinion. And that I think is why they didn't spend any capital at the position. I think they feel really comfortable with Devonta Booker sitting in that 3 spot, and I don't blame him. I think he's a talented NFL running back. I think even when his days in Denver are over, he's going to get a spot. He's going to be kind of like that Alfred Blue, the guy that never really blows you away, but he's a pro, and he's going to stick around, and he's going to be in the NFL for a long time, and he's going to do, nothing great, but everything good enough where a team feels really comfortable with him on the back end of their roster.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't like any of these running backs. Well, all 3 of them. I don't want anything to do with any of them. But we'll see. So moving on, I'm going to have to eat some crow here on this one, New Orleans. And I did say a few podcasts ago before the draft that I really thought that the Saints would address that Mark Ingram role. And I didn't think Lovetavius Murray was the guy. So here we are, a few weeks after the draft's done, and they didn't draft a running back. I was hoping they'd take like Damien Harris or something on day 2, but Lovetavius Murray is going to be the guy in the Saints offense playing that Mark Ingram role. And they did invest in an undrafted free agent, Devine Ozigbo, who's getting a little buzz right now. But Lovetavius came out of this unscathed, avoided a landmine, and he's going to be, pounding the rock there in New Orleans.
Absolutely love it. I love Lovetavius. I'm so stoked. I mean, he was a guy who, similar to Ballage, I have a boatload of shares of Lovetavius Murray, and it's just such a beautiful thing for me. But with that being said, this year, if he pops off and starts to get that Saints buzz, you've got to consider moving on. So he's going to be a really interesting guy. You definitely don't sell now because his stock certainly has potential to go up. But you're not buying now either because, the risk factor is priced into, and the upside is priced into what you're going to have to pay right now. He's kind of just in that like stock purgatory where he's worth more to the person who has him. Because the upside that he does offer your roster is undeniable, and you're not going to get, a package that's going to, return what his upside could be. But when you're buying, you're just going to be paying too much for the risk that you would endure. So he's kind of a funky stock right now in Dynasty. Every now and again, you kind of see these guys where, you're in the middle ground, and he's one of them. And, as someone who owns him, I'm happier on that side of the equation than the people that don't, because I think about what I paid for him last year, and it was a late round startup pick, or, it was a 3rd round rookie pick to get Lovetavius Murray behind Dalvin Cook. And, that proved to be, worth the price alone just last year. So even if he flames out, he's already returned his value on my roster for what I needed him for. And if he flashes a little bit though, and I can kind of get that upside package for him, that's definitely a move that I would consider to reset the clock and give myself some more dart throws at running backs.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an NFL Max episode if we didn't mention Lovetavius Murray at least once.
That's right.
Moving on, before we, I got one more team here before we hit the landmine hits. One team of note wanted to talk about was Atlanta because Devonta Freeman, he's got a potential, well, the Falcons have a potential out in 2020 for Devonta Freeman. So, they could use him up this year and he could be gone for 2020. And the guy that I was really targeting here, I've gotten in a lot of leagues, is Ito Smith. And I just did not want to see them, draft anybody that would affect Ito Smith's stock. And they did draft Qadree Ollison here from Pittsburgh in the 5th round. And metrically, not that great of a profile here. Athletically, he doesn't show agility or burst. He's got a 4.58 40, a little bit of speed. Somewhat productive in Pittsburgh. But he's got some size, 228 pounds, 6'1". But I don't think if you're an Ito Smith owner, you should be concerned about Qadree Ollison. I still think it's wheels up for Ito Smith, and looking forward to seeing if they're going to utilize him even more next year. But that was the last team I really had on my radar, just because I'm such a big fan of Ito. So,
man, we are on opposite sides tonight. I'm on the Ollison bandwagon here. I am not a believer in Ito Smith. I think he had his opportunity last year. He didn't show too well. And Ollison's a big back, but not only is he a big back, he's a big back who can catch. So he's the type of guy who possesses that 3-down skill set. I don't think he'll be a 3-down back. I don't think that's Atlanta style, but I think that he has every opportunity to kind of supplant Ito Smith in this offense, especially down at the goal line, where they seem to prefer Ito Smith last year, but he didn't do great in that role. So
no, that's not who he is, though. He's not a goal line back.
Exactly. And that's my point is I think Ollison has big time potential on this roster. This is a really sneaky landing spot. And you can get Ollison right now. He just went undrafted in the last 3 drafts that I've done. I mean, you can get him for pretty much free. And the only reason that he wasn't drafted is because I haven't had a 4th round pick in any but my first draft of the year. And I got a different player in the 4th. But Ollison is in a sneaky spot here. And I really like his potential. And if he goes undrafted, he is definitely the type of guy that I'm going to stick on the back end of my roster. And, I think we'll have clarity going into the preseason of what the Falcons want to do. But, if he ends up being the 3rd back on that roster, I'll probably end up cutting him before the season starts. But I'm monitoring that situation very, very closely. He would be on my short list.
He profiles as a plotter in my spreadsheet here. It's just he's got no wiggle, and that's kind of what Ito Smith does. He's got some juice, and he can do his thing in the passing game. So I don't think that role, I don't think he'll take a hit. I mean, if anything, maybe it'll hurt Devonta Freeman, because he profiles more as like a first down back, and especially in goal line situations, short yardage situations. So that's why I was like, Ito's fine. Ito's still going to do his Ito thing, but I don't know. We'll see. So
I'm just not an Ito believer, I think.
I know.
That's where I'm at.
We talked about it last year. Okay, so here's some spots that I feel like these players took a little bit of a hit, and we'll wrap up the show here in a few minutes. But just briefly, let's go to Green Bay, because I know we both differ on this situation. And so you've got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, and Green Bay goes and drafts Dexter Williams from Notre Dame. So I'm a really big fan of Dexter Williams. I mean, his profile is awesome. He's got speed. He's got size. He's 212 pounds. He's got agility. He had an awesome 3-cone. He's got some killer burst, and he's very productive in Notre Dame. So, right off the bat, to me, he's way better than Jamal Williams. So I'm looking at a situation here where Aaron Jones is going to be the guy, week 1, barring any kind of injury or anything. But I think Dexter Williams will supplant Jamal Williams in the preseason, be the number 2. And then if anything happens to Aaron Jones, look out, because Dexter Williams is a beast. I mean, he could do it all. So, and you're actually not even a fan of Aaron Jones. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this one.
Yeah, initially, when they drafted Dexter Williams, I was thinking to myself, ooh, that's a sneaky landing spot. But the more I think about it, I don't know. They're in love with Aaron Jones, and yeah, he doesn't have the draft capital. He's a 6th-round pick, but neither does Jamal Williams. He was just before Aaron Jones, and neither does Dexter Williams. He's a 6th-round pick. So there's no pedigree riding in this competition right now. It's all about, performance and who the best back is at this point. And right now, that's Aaron Jones, in their opinion, not mine. Obviously, I love Jamal Williams. I think he's a great back. I think he's a pro. I don't think he's a superstar. When I say I love guys, that doesn't necessarily mean I love them, as like the next Todd Gurley or the next Saquon Barkley. But I love this guy because I think he goes out. I think he's a hard worker. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's a big back with a skill set who could play well in Green Bay's system if he's just given a full opportunity. When he was given that opportunity, he didn't do too hot in the beginning of the season. Aaron Jones comes back, kind of steals the thunder, and then you see Jamal get a shot at the end of the season there, at the end of the fantasy season in weeks, I think it was 15, 16, and he showed really well, especially in week 16 in the championship. I mean, he dropped like 30 points in PPR. I mean, he's a really good back, and I think when you put him in that situation without the pressure, when you're going to start the season with Aaron Jones, as soon as Jamal Williams gets his shot, he's going to seize it. I think last year he went into the season as the guy with Aaron Jones, still slow to come back to the lineup and misses the first little bit of time, and he just didn't show well. I think he was putting too much pressure on himself. But as soon as Aaron Jones came back and took over the show, as soon as Jamal got a shot, I think he seized it, and I think you're going to see something similar this year. I don't think that Dexter Williams is going to beat him out for that number 2 role. I think Jamal at this point is accustomed with the system. I think he probably has the trust of Aaron Rodgers over a rookie, and I think that means a lot for Green Bay. I'm interested to see what LaFleur does there in Green Bay, and with the new coaching staff, comes new evaluation. So, I think these two do leave pretty unscathed in just adding Dexter Williams. I think it is a sneaky spot for Dexter Williams. It's one of the better situations to end up in. I just am not sure that it really puts that much pressure on the top 2 in Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams.
Yeah, we'll see. Just before we wrap it up, a couple guys of note. The Lions drafted Ty Johnson in the 6th round. I'm a pretty big fan of his. Averaged 7.6 yards a carry at Maryland. And, Theo Riddick should be donezo after the season. He can play that role easily and do that. So that I'm looking for Ty Johnson.
Carry on.
Well,
so can carry on.
That's why I didn't mention carry on. But Ty Johnson will be a nice little sleeper. We're deep diving here tonight, Nick. We're not talking about carry on. Travis Homer in Seattle, possibly replacing CJ Prosise, JD McKissick. Both of those guys might not even make the roster. But if Travis Homer does, he can, easily do what those guys do on 3rd downs. And I guess lastly would be in New England, Sony Michel with that 1st round pedigree. And then a year later, New England comes right back and drafts Damien Harris in the 3rd round. So that pretty much kills Rex Burkhead stock. It definitely puts a little dent in Michel, especially with those injuries. And James White too, because Damien Harris can catch the ball. So, I think that they're going to work him into the offense. But, New England is just a landmine in itself when it comes to the running back position. I think they're going to find a way to get Damien Harris on the field with Sony Michel, and James White will be doing James White things. So it's like, it's such a crowded backfield in New England, but it always is. So,
yeah, I totally agree with New England. I love Damien Harris. And I think, I was saying this in a conversation with a buddy the other day, is like, New England took a shot at a 1st rounder with Sony Michel. And I think they knew exactly what they were getting into. I think he has, knee issues similar to Jay Ajayi, but I think that they really liked his skill set. I think they really liked his fit in their offense. And I think they knew that they had a really close window with Tom Brady. I suspect they weren't sure if he would even, make it to this year. Obviously he did, but I'm not sure they really knew that in the back of their mind. And I think that they knew that they had a 1, 2, maybe 3-year window. And so they spend 1st round draft capital on Sony Michel and his knee situations. And, they're well documented regardless. He's got a Jay Ajayi type thing going on. And, you see what happened with Ajayi, how quickly he fell off the map and into, out of favor with the NFL in general. And so, they spend a 1st round capital on Sony Michel, and everyone thinks that's crazy. But, if I said to you today that the Lions could spend a first-round pick and win a championship, would you do it?
Of course.
Exactly.
Can we win a playoff game?
Exactly. You don't really care who the player is that you spend, a first-round pick on. If you get that ultimate goal, winning a championship, that's what it's all about. And that's exactly what the Patriots did. They spent a first-round pick on Sony Michel, and guess what? Whether you like the pick or not, or you like Sony Michel as a dynasty asset, he was a big part of their game plan in the playoffs. And I would actually say one of the three biggest reasons that the Patriots even made the Super Bowl, one, and then two, were able to close the door in a tough game with the Rams, where defense was the focal point. Sony Michel really stepped up in the postseason there for New England. I think they knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. And I think that they know, all the ramifications of that decision. So what do? They have a draft where, they are stocked with picks. And they go and they spend day two capital on a guy like Damien Harris, another back that they can probably pair with Sony Michel. I still suspect Sony Michel will be the featured back, so to speak. But I think Damien Harris is going to cut into his workload quite a bit.
Big time.
Just in an effort to, preserve Sony Michel's knees and his health. And I think that you could see a similar situation this year to what you saw last year, where they really kind of mitigate the risk with Michel by lightening his workload throughout the course of the season. And then at the very end, boom, let's give him all the Michel we could get.
Yeah.
I think it's very shrewd by the Patriots. Some would argue, you don't spend a first round capital on a player like that, but you know what? They won a championship, and I think that they could go back and they could lean on Michel again. And if Brady is, anywhere close to the player that, he was last year, and eventually he's got to fall off a cliff. But if he can produce at the rate that he did last year, they're going to be right back in the thick of things, no matter what people say. They'll likely win that division, and they'll be right back in the playoffs. And, Bill does a better job than anyone of adjusting and scheming. And, if you've got a running back like Sony Michel, and now you add Damien Harris to the mix, and you've got a guy like James White who can do some specialized things, it's a really intriguing backfield. Not one that you probably want to get involved with at this point in Dynasty. I think if any poker chip, I'm going to take Damien Harris at this point. But, you can never question what the Patriots are doing. They always, if any team has clarity on what they want to do or what they want to accomplish, it's the New England Patriots. Yeah. It seems like a muddled mess to the rest of, football and to all the fans, but I think that they have a very clear vision for what they want to do. And I think they have big plans for Damien Harris. I think they have big plans for Sony Michel, and I think they have big plans for James White. It's just a matter of how that plays out on the field and what week. That's the tough part for Dynasty and fantasy football in general, is trying to predict what the heck they're going to do.
Yeah, they're not going to spend a third-round pick on Damien Harris if they weren't going to get him involved in the offense. So, yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said there. So all apologies for tonight. We had some technical difficulties with this episode, some internet problems and some recording issues, but just wanted to thank everybody out there for listening, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with our technical difficulties fixed. But again, just wanted to thank everybody for listening, for subscribing, and don't forget to share and click that button. So thanks everybody out there for the hot pineapples, the Ewok juggernauts. Everybody one clap. Thanks, guys. You see me?
Yeah, I see you. I didn't even log back in.
I see your chair.
This is ridiculous.
Let's see if your mic works.
Hello?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Hello.
I hear you. Well, I hear you through the phone.
Hello.
No, let me hang up the phone. I'm gonna hang up the phone with you.
Okay. Yo.
There we go.
This is ridiculous, man. I'm so frustrated. Someone who sleep is at a premium as it is, This is such a waste of time.
I know.
Just freaking AT&T.
So let's keep this short then. And that's it.
Holy smokes.
Well, we battled through it, man. I'll see if I could do some editing, and I'll try to compress the audio and make it sound better. So, well, that'll be it for the show. Just wanted to thank everybody out there for. Oh wait, hold on a second.
I would even mention technical difficulties. Sorry for a shorter show. We were having technical difficulties all night. We wanted to pump something out, so you're getting whatever we can, put on tape here or whatever.
I think it sounds okay, by the way.
Okay.
I do. So if you want to just, maybe I'll say something right now and be like, we had some technical difficulties, but we're going through the phone here, just so the listeners know. I think it sounds okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yo. Hello.
We got
hello,
video.
hello.
No audio. What happened?
Yeah, I gotta call it a day, dude. I'm so angry. I'm like, I can't do this all night. Waking up at 5, it's already 10 o'clock, and we're getting nowhere. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? This is still recording. This phone call is recording. So we could technically talk for another 15 minutes and wrap up the show and do like a 30-minute show.
But the audio is going to sound so bad.
It doesn't sound that bad. It's better than nothing. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, cool. I'll keep you posted.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
You got it.
All right, talk to you.
Later.
Bye.
One clap. One clap. One clap.
This is ridiculous.
Let's see if your mic works.
Hello?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Hello?
I hear you. Well, I hear you through the phone, though.
Hello?